One question, really, I suppose, to begin with. Why has Oliver Dowden decided to tell us all about this now?
Well, that is a good question, because they've known about it for quite some time. But one might say better late than never, because I think it is important to air these sorts of things, give them publicity.
Yes, no doubt. But, I mean, in terms of what damage they may or may not have done, according to Oliver Dowden, not very much. So what is the point of the government kind of suggesting that China is out to get us? Because all the people I've spoken to today said, well, we assume that we're under surveillance from China anyway, aren't we?
Well, yes, we are, but I think we should make the task much more difficult for them. I mean, the first thing to say is that if it wasn't worthwhile, China wouldn't do it. And clearly they do put an awful lot of effort into these sorts of cyber attacks and other forms of espionage. So clearly they see some value in it.
Yeah, I'm sure they do, but it's a question of whether it's, you know, as annoying as having your bank account hacked by somebody who's trying to take your money, or whether it's actually something far more sinister. You know, I mean, for example, if they've got information from the Electoral Commission, you know, maybe we could call them up and ask them which way everybody's going to vote in the next election.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little more serious than that. I mean, if you take, there was a case, two cases actually in Canada, where the Chinese vice consul in Vancouver claimed that she'd been responsible for the two people losing their seats. And indeed, if you look at the voting patterns, it was very against the trend of things. And they lost their seats, or presumably the Chinese enabled them to lose their seats because they were very anti-Chinese. And what they did was to mobilize an awful lot of Chinese diaspora voters to go against the people who the Chinese didn't like. Now, if you've got hold of the electoral roll, for instance, here in the UK, I think there are two worries. One is it just adds to the information that they're collecting on individuals. You get name, who you live with, address, etc. Put that with other things, and you can start targeting people for attacks on them. But also, if you were, for instance, trying to let's say Ian Duncan Smith was in a constituency where there was likely to be a very narrow vote. Well, if you can get out a couple of hundred voters to vote against him, you might be able to get rid of him. So there is the possibility of actually influencing our democracy. Is it going to bring UK democracy to its knees? Not this particular instant. It's chipping away, but surely we shouldn't be allowing people to chip away at our democracy.
No, but I mean, as long as there's data, there will be somebody trying to get that data for themselves. And I mean, it's probably pretty easy to get data if you're the Chinese government these days, not least because of all the social media activity that we know about. I mean, Facebook knows more about me than China does any day of the week.
Yeah, there is a difference, though, and I've heard this argument a lot of times, if you'll excuse me, even from people who are MPs and others.
Yeah.
Well, my data goes to Facebook or Instagram or whatever. What's the difference? Well, I think there is a big difference, actually. I mean, first of all, there's a difference between a hostile state taking your data and a company. You can
I'm not so sure.
sue. You can sue these companies. You can't sue China. On the whole, American companies, let's say, that are actually roughly on our side in terms of supporting the sorts of interests and values that we have. China isn't. So, if you gave me the choice of would I rather my data to be stolen by a big company or by China, it's not a great choice, but I'd go for the company.
Well, yeah.
Anyway.
But I mean, I'd rather it wasn't stolen at all. But the fact remains that Oliver Dowden got up today, made quite a serious speech in Parliament, warning about all sorts of things that could happen, without really giving us any form of sort of defence as to how it was going to be stopped from happening, and what would happen if it did, in fact, breach into all sorts of national security. Would there be sanctions? I mean, I think no government that I've seen in this country for a long time has got the stomach for it.
Well, maybe this is the start of a reaction. I mean, I do think it helps to publicise these things and make a noise about them. If you're subject to behaviour from a bully, the best thing to do is to make a noise about it rather than just to go into a corner and keep quiet about it.
Yeah.
So that's
fine. But I mean, in the good old days of the Cold War, as you might say, there was a bit of tit for tat, wasn't there? Then we'd have people messing around with China. I don't get the sense that anybody here's got the wherewithal or the guts to do it.
Well, neither you nor I know exactly what GCHQ and others do in terms of attacking China back. But I think it's, amongst other things, it's the sheer scale of what China's doing. And it's not just in the UK. And it's not just the electoral roll, of course. I mean, by going for people like Ian Duncan Smith and other MPs, what they're trying to do is to get into their private details, etc., see if there's anything that they can use to discredit them, whether it's their finances or some of their personal behavior, and use that to stick it up on in disinformation on various forms of media. So I think it is relatively serious, whether it's the electoral roll or attacking individual people, discrediting our democracy. But as I say, is UK going to collapse tomorrow as a result? No, but I think it's far better than we just lie there and ask them to do whatever they want.